Right now, somewhere in the Persian Gulf, a tanker captain is deciding whether it's worth the risk to sail through a 21-mile strip of water. That decision, one captain, one ship, is part of the reason your gas station sign changed last week. Here's the thing nobody's really explaining to you clearly. We're not in a normal economy right now. We are in a war economy, even if you live 9,000 miles from the fighting. Oil tankers are rerouting. Central banks are frozen with indecision, and the price of a gallon of gas has swung by more than $1.50 in the last 5 months alone. So today, we're going to actually connect the dots from a missile strike in the Middle East all the way to the number on your receipt at the grocery store. No jargon, no boring textbook economics, just what happened, what it's doing to prices right now, and what might happen next. Let's get into it. Let's rewind for a second, because you can't understand the world stuff without understanding how we got here. Back in late February this year, Israel and the United States carried out a massive strike on Iran. It wasn't a symbolic strike either, it carried out Iran's supreme leader and a huge chunk of its military and government infrastructure. Iran was not just merely sitting idly by watching this spectacle unfold. It hit back missiles at US bases, at Israel, at American allies across the region. And then it did something that sent a shock wave through every economy on earth. It effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz. As you may know, that Strait of Hormuz is a narrow strip of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, and roughly a quarter to a third of all the oil that moves by sea on this planet passes through it. Somewhere around 20% of the world's natural gas too. Block that strait, even partially, and you're not just affecting one country, you're squeezing the fuel tank of the entire global economy at the same time. A ceasefire got signed in April, another agreement followed in June, but, and this is the part that matters for you watching this today, that ceasefire has been cracking. Just this month, fighting flared up again, and the US carried out fresh strikes on Iranian coastal targets. So this isn't some settled story from months ago, this is live. It could get worse again by the time you finish watching this video. Here's a phrase economists keep using, and I actually think it's the right one. Oil is the transmission channel, meaning this is the pipe through which war becomes inflation, and inflation becomes your problem. At the peak of the panic, Gulf nations were cutting oil production by more than 10 million barrels a day. To put that in perspective, that's more oil disappearing from the market in weeks than most crises cause in years. Brent crude, which is the global benchmark everyone watches, spiked all the way up to almost $121 a barrel in April. And before the war started, it was sitting comfortably in the high $60s. Now here's where it gets interesting, because oil prices haven't stayed at that panic level. As I'm recording this, Brent is trading around $84 to $85 a barrel. So we've come down a lot from the worst of it, but we're still nowhere close to where we started the year. And every time there's a new headline out of Iran, the price jumps again within hours. Literally, a few days ago, Brent jumped 3% in a single morning because of a single attack on 2 vessels near the Gulf. Okay, so oil gets expensive. Who actually cares besides people who drive? Turns out almost everyone, just through different doors. The International Monetary Fund put out a global forecast recently, and here's the top line. Global growth is sitting around 3% for this year. That sounds fine on its own, but dig one layer deeper and the picture gets a lot less comfortable, because that 3% is hiding 2 completely different economies living inside the same statistic. Countries that import their oil, most of Europe, most of Asia, a huge chunk of Africa, are getting squeezed. Meanwhile, countries plugged into the AI and tech boom are actually growing faster, balancing the global number. It's a 2-speed world economy held up by tech on one side and dragged down by energy costs on the other. The World Bank ran their own numbers and found something pretty stark. Developing economies are now expected to grow slower than they projected back in January, and the majority of countries that either import or export raw materials are worse off than expected. Not one or the other, both. And there's a researcher quote I want to share with you because it's the best one-line summary of this whole situation I've come across. Economists at the Peterson Institute modeled out what a year of expensive oil does to the two biggest economies on the planet, and even the US, which produces a lot of its own oil, still comes out with a smaller economy than it would have had otherwise. China, despite having its own oil, gas, and fertilizer supplies, takes also bigger hit because when the rest of the world slows down, they buy less from Chinese factories. So this is the mechanism. War doesn't have to touch your country to touch your economy. It just needs to touch the price of the thing every other industry runs on. Alright, let's talk about real money in real people's pockets. So let's go around the world for a second. In the Philippines, gasoline prices jumped over 50% within the first 3 weeks of the war, the single largest increase on the planet. Diesel there climbed even further, up over 80%, which matters enormously because diesel is what moves food, goods, and people around a country built on trucks, jeepneys, and fishing boats. In Vietnam, prices jumped so fast that people started panic buying fuel, lining up at stations before supply ran out. Nigeria, despite being an oil-producing nation itself, saw diesel prices spike nearly 80% because a lot of what it exports as crude, it has to import back as refined fuel. Then there's Sri Lanka, which is honestly the most heartbreaking case in this whole story. This is a country still recovering from a full economic collapse back in 2019. It imports about 60% of its energy. When this crisis hit, the government didn't have room to absorb it, so they declared every single Wednesday a nationwide public holiday just to cut fuel consumption and introduced a rationing pass system for anyone who wants to buy gas at all. Egypt did something similar from the other direction, ordering malls, shops, and cafes to close early by 9 or 10 p.m. and dimming public street lights just to shave demand off the grid. And in Pakistan, you had scenes of motorcyclists lined up for blocks at filling stations because Pakistan, like Bangladesh, is especially exposed here. They don't just face high prices, they face genuine price sensitivity, meaning even a small global shock turns into a large domestic one because there's so little financial cushion underneath them. Here's the pattern, and it's a brutal one. The countries doing the least to cause this war are absorbing the most damage from it. Rich, energy-independent nations mostly adjusted. Poorer, import-dependent nations had to ration electricity, shorten business hours, and in some cases declare emergency holidays just to survive a price spike they had zero say in creating. Even wealthier oil-importing regions didn't escape clean. Japan and South Korea, two of the most developed economies on earth, get flagged repeatedly by analysts as being unusually exposed because over 80% of their energy needs come from imports, much of it moving straight through the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's look at the US. In the first week of July, the national average for a gallon of regular gas was $3.79, about 20% higher than the same week last year, with prices rising in nearly every state. Compared to the 50-80% spikes in places like the Philippines and Nigeria, that's actually a relatively mild increase, largely because the US produces much of its own oil. It shows how much your country's energy situation shapes the impact of a global crisis. It's been a roller coaster in the US too, not a straight line. Gas peaked above $4.50 a gallon back in May, over 50% higher than right before the war started. Then it cooled off through June as the ceasefire looked like it might hold. And then right on cue, the second the ceasefire started wobbling in July, prices ticked back up again. Here's the plot twist. The latest US inflation report looked like great news. Consumer prices fell in June, the biggest monthly drop in over 6 years, and annual inflation dropped to 3.5%, down from over 4%. But there's a catch. Those numbers only reflect June, when the ceasefire was holding and oil prices were falling. They don't include the oil price spike after fighting resumed in early July. As one analyst put it, the same reason inflation cooled could send it back up next month. So, is inflation getting better or worse? Both. It improved for about 3 weeks in one country. Now we'll see if it lasts. While millions from Manila to Colombo to Lagos have been living with the worst of this crisis all year. Not everyone's losing here, and that's worth being honest about. Energy exporting nations, the ones selling oil, not buying it, are doing fine, some of them better than fine. Meanwhile, small, debt-heavy countries that depend heavily on oil exports through the Gulf but also carry huge debt loads got hit incredibly hard when shipping routes got disrupted hard enough that wealthier neighboring countries had to step in with emergency currency support just to stop their economy from spiraling. Europe's split down the middle too. Countries heavily reliant on gas-powered electricity are feeling real pain reminiscent of the 2022 energy crisis. Countries with more diversified energy, nuclear, renewables, are noticeably more insulated. And this is the part I think most people miss. This isn't really the economy as one single thing anymore. It's dozens of microeconomies, each with a different exposure to one narrow strip of water in the Persian Gulf. Here's the honest, no-spin answer. Nobody actually knows, and anyone who tells you they do is guessing with confidence. What we do know is the range of outcomes. If the ceasefire holds and shipping through the strait fully normalizes, most forecasters expect oil to keep drifting down, inflation to keep cooling, and this whole story to fade from headlines by the end of the year. But if the fighting escalates again, and given that we've already seen the ceasefire break down more than once this year, oil could spike right back toward that $115 to $120 range we saw in April. And if that happens, everything we just talked about reverses, gasoline prices climb again, inflation numbers stop looking so friendly, and the Fed's wait-and-see approach turns into a much harder decision. The uncomfortable truth is this. The global economy right now isn't being steered by economists or central bankers. It's being steered in large part by whether a ceasefire between two countries holds for one more week. Every time you pay more at the pump or the grocery store, remember it didn't happen by accident. A conflict thousands of miles away can still hit your wallet. If you want more like that, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, has this crisis made life more expensive where you live, and where are you watching from? See you in the next video.